Hello and welcome to Infrastructure Next, which is FinBusiness special knowledge series, and we have Biswa from IndusInd Bank and Gaurish from Nutanix with us. Thank you so much for joining FinBusiness.
Thanks for having us.
Biswa, I will start with you. IndusInd Bank has adopted a lot of technologies in last 4 to 5 years specifically, and you are doing so many things on a digital side. If I ask you specifically on the infrastructure side, because data center is one of the key area, what kind of technology have you adopted there? What is your strategy for the infrastructure?
So that's a good question. Obviously, digital for us is a big disruptor, and we have gone through several rounds of innovations in the digital space. We were in fact one of the first to launch the video branch, which is an interesting concept. People dial up the IVR and now they can dial up a banker, a teller on the phone on a video. Now, what is essentially happening is that it is placing a lot of demand on, on the data center, both in terms of the volume of data that is increasing and the kind of heterogeneous computing that is happening from an end user perspective, right? So even if I keep the application side aside, which of course is also changing quite dramatically, I think these are two factors which are determining how the data center needs to respond, how the users are connected, what environments they're connected from, and secondly, the exponential increase in demand of data, right? Which means that I have to be very efficient. So in IndusInd, we typically follow what I call a real, truly bimodal kind of structure. We maintain consistency and reliability as one of the forte, just to make sure that users get high levels of service. So, so our infrastructure has to be always on, 24/7. So that needs to be monitored, that needs to be maintained, that needs to be capacitized. On the other side, we are looking at the innovative technologies as well, and we've obviously gone through a fair amount of virtualization in our asset, in our infrastructure base.
So if I take the perspective from what Biswa told me, most of the financial institutions face a lot of challenges in the ownership of data, specifically the cost of ownership of data. What are your suggestions? What are your observations? How can actually financial institutions reduce the cost of ownership of infrastructure?
I think more than, infrastructure is already compressed. So really, taking data centers now need to be fluid. They need to be efficient, right? A fluid data center will allow any institution, whether it's a bank, whether it's a manufacturing, whether IT, ITS, to respond to business very quickly. And when I say, as Biswa said, they've adopted virtualization as a technology, right? That's the first step to building a cloud, right? The second step, what we believe is, you need to have a fluid data center, fluid infrastructure, which is ready to adapt to changes, to the challenges of everyday challenges of any organization. You adopt a new business, you want to roll out a new business, it really needs to be at the speed of light today. And hyperconverged can be the building block for the hybrid data center. And once you set up, and then you grow on top of it, and you have your cloud, you have orchestration, you have a hybrid cloud to be going all along with it. So I think today's data center needs to be fluid, is what my message would be. The building blocks have to be fluid, they have to be interchangeable, there should be no lock-in, right? Customer should have the choice of infrastructure, choice of hypervisor, choice of cloud.
So when you spoke about hyperconvergence, I will come back to you, but when you're saying that there has to be a choice for the customers, and banking services is absolutely about the customers. So when there is so much complexity, specifically adopting infrastructure, how do you actually deal with these challenges? Because you have regulations, you have lots of customers.
So yes, the complexity is actually, it's dramatically increased over the last decade or so, and it's increasing, very, very fast. Also, I think the choice of technology, I think that's what we were talking about. The various options on the table in terms of choices of technology have also increased, right? There are a lot more platforms, technology platforms, compute, storage, hyperconverged, networking, all of that has kind of undergone a dramatic change. So there are a lot more choices to deal with as well. I think to make sense of it, it depends on the strategy essentially. So our strategy has been really twofold. One is that, first of all, let's harvest what we already have. So when you already have an estate, when you already have an asset deployed, harvest it as best as you can. Leverage it to the fullest, so that the return on the investment is justified. Now, on the other side, we also firmly believe the cloud is a great enabler, and it's actually, I would say, a paradigm change. Now, where we see applicability of that is where we are looking at, for example, microservices, Kubernetes kind of environments, which is rapidly scalable, completely volatile demand, and technology which is married to the cloud, which is native to the cloud. So that's an environment which we are looking to explore as well, right? So I think the choice has to be based on the business need. The choice has to be based on the kind of use case. So our strategy is harvest what we already have, make it more efficient. At the same time, leverage the cloud proactively, right? For certain types of workloads, certain types of applications where you can really use the power of the cloud. So towards that, I would say, in a true sense of the term, it is a kind of a hybrid model, right? So in the infrastructure age of choice and of complexity, that's the way I would try to answer the question.
So Biswa says hybrid. Do you believe that the hybrid cloud strategy is the ultimate goal financial institutions should have?
There is nothing called ultimate, right? Things are changing every day. Now, if you really ask me, cloud itself is a concept.
Absolutely.
Right? It's nothing about public or private. Cloud is a concept. Concept of mini consumption, bite-sized consumption, buy what you want, when you want, start small, grow as you want. I mean, think of it. There are enterprise applications which are basically static and have a customer and banks or any customer wants a desired outcome. Then there are fluid applications. Things may change depending on the outcome. Now, when you don't know what outcome it's going to be for the business, a lot of times customers may want to choose and go to the public cloud. Whereas for a static application where the desired outcome is known and there is a compliance requirement, people may want to keep it in-house. Right. So cloud is a concept, really not an end in itself. What we at Nutanix are trying to do is we're basically trying to create the fluid concept, the cloud-like consumption pattern in the private cloud. What a Nutanix kind of an approach allows you to do is consume IT as it is available, as the developments are available in the industry. You start small, you consume and you buy what you want, when you want, and you consume technology, the newest of the technology, as it is rolled out to the customers. Right? So you don't get stuck into a 3 or a 4 or a 5-year-old technology just because your business has changed, just because you invested in it for the next 3 to 5 years. Our concept is basically buy what you want, when you want, and buy the latest.
So basically hybrid technology, or you can say multi-cloud strategy is what you
absolutely
push
and
on.
we believe that's what is going to be the norm. That is going to be the norm. People are going to consume cloud.
But Biswa, if I ask you specifically about again, hybrid model that you said, if you look at most of the financial institutions or even not financial sector, but otherwise also banks and other sector companies, the network and the data center somehow work in silos. What is the biggest challenge there to keep them on the same page?
Well, that's really, I think that's the crux really of how the earlier world of data center was monolithic with servers and storage and all of that, and networking was a separate discipline, was evolving independently. But I think the word of the future is a software-defined data center, right? That's really where we are headed actually. So when I started talking about virtualization, that was really phase one. For us, we're now looking at a full-fledged SDDC implementation, for instance, right? So that would imply that right down to each virtual machine, how can we build a load balancing capability, how can we build firewalls, how can we build secure hardening processes, how can we build compute and storage all within a box, so to speak, right? And at the micro level, right? So that's really where we are heading now. And that gives us more control, more visibility, more granular, I would say, fine-grained control over the environment. So the network is now getting subsumed, if you will, as a software-defined environment, in the software-defined environment, right? So that's really the journey that we are taking, and we are very clear that it cannot remain as two different silos. It cannot remain as two independent entities. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other technology on the table as well. I think we've been talking with Nutanix as well. So hyperconverged has a role to play in that space as well. So it's just finding the right balance, as you were saying, looking at what's a use case where we can start small, where you can look at what is the applicability of it, judge how it is working, is it giving that kind of experience, and making it really simpler, right? But we are on the journey as it is, right? So taking this forward, I think it will be a convergence of networks and data centers is obviously going to happen. We're already on that same path, and traditional silos need to be broken. Traditional silos on network side or data center side no longer exist, right? In fact, today when we have a production issue, we probably will involve, the first thing we do is to really call out, understanding where the problem lies.
Right.
And then calling the specialists from both these teams together. It's no longer about, it's not my problem, it's your problem, and so on and so forth, right? So that is one. Secondly, with the rise of the fintechs, what's really happening is that a lot of those applications, the underlying technology they are transparent to, because they will typically be on a cloud, right? So they would typically deploy themselves on a cloud native kind of a service, which an Amazon would offer or an Azure would offer. Yes. So as you were saying, the challenge for us is to give an environment which is very similar to that for even fintechs to deploy things on premise. Not everything will be on a public cloud, right? So I agree to an extent that understanding how an environment can be catered to as a combination of all of these components, including networking, so that an application can fit into it seamlessly, can be adapted to it seamlessly, is probably where the challenge is, because we want to do releases quickly. Right. We want a mobile application to go through a release every week, right? If you're able to do that, the only way we can do that is to have very granular control and have very, very fine-grained policies which can be completely automated, right? Without having to do changes, at a switch level, at a firewall level, at a network level, at a server level. So that's where I think the bundling is happening, and we are definitely going to see more innovation going to happen in that space. We are definitely, on the path to that. Yeah.
You explained it very well. I pick up 2 points. One is simplicity, and second is seamless. Yeah. That's the two things which every bank is looking at it. Yeah. In fact, every financial institution today says that, okay, I have to make it as simple as possible. If I ask you, if I pick up that seamless and simplicity point, and if I ask you specifically, how hyperconvergence can actually simplify data center?
Any technology, consumer or enterprise, if it doesn't make your life simple, it's useless. Okay, let's be in today's time, it's useless. Whether it's a consumer grade technology, whether it's enterprise grade technology. Now, Biswa spoke about everything in software. When I spoke about a fluid data center, that's exactly what I meant, right? So when basically you're doing a software defined data center, allows you to be agile, allows you to consume newer technologies, allows you to bring newer features and functionalities, unlike the earlier hardware-defined data center. That's point number one. The second part, he also spoke something very important in his earlier thing. He spoke about containerization of workloads, microservices. And these are the things that basically in today's world, when you're talking about hyperconvergence, you're talking about a hyperconvergence of server, storage, network, cloud. You're talking about hyperconvergence of all the skills needed. Right? And it's our job, it's our duty as vendors, as OEM vendors, to make life simple for our customers, right? So if I can give a Kubernetes, for example, here, we've just released a product called Carbon, which is a packaged Kubernetes solution, right? Which we actually can deploy, and we are ready to deploy a complete Kubernetes package in less than 5 minutes. And trust me, when I say less than 5 minutes, it's virtually less than 5 minutes. It's actually a click of a button. We roll out the entire Kubernetes. The other part of simplicity. Now, look at the complexity today, right? You replace servers, there's a migration involved. You replace storage, there's a migration involved. Then comes the virtualization piece you want to upgrade. Then comes the network piece, right? There's a migration involved. Now, think of it. I mean, one of my customers said, Gaurish, this is my biggest challenge. One of the large banks told me, this is my biggest challenge. Yeah. I buy X number of cores every year. I buy Y petabytes of storage every year, and all my team is doing is migrating. It takes 6 months for me to migrate. And if you can actually solve this problem for me, you're taking a huge burden and giving time back to my team. Now, I want to bring a concept to you. When we talk about technology, we speak about business value of that technology and in the data center, everything. What I want to also bring to the table is, are we also defining the human value of the technology? So if I can tell my customers, hey, Mr. Customer, with our technology, no more weekend work for you. That's the value of simplicity. Right? That if my technology cannot offer that to the customer in today's world, one-click updates. You want to update a code, you should be able to update a code while an application is running. Right? You can't be taking an application down, because take an example, if I may say so, in Biswa, in your environment, how many apps do you run? Probably 1,000 apps in IndusInd Bank?
Not so many. Quite a few.
Quite a few. Hundreds probably. Few hundreds, right? Now, think of a situation where he wants to do something in the data center and has to keep everyone updated, right? That's not what Amazon does. If you are an Amazon customer, they don't come and tell you, hey, I'm going to do an update to you because you are his customer. So why should you be in a situation where you have to go and tell your customers, hey, I'm going to do an update? And then one application guy, some guy stands up and says, no, I have a rollout. Please don't do anything this week and don't touch. And everything goes for a toss. Yeah, absolutely. Right? That's point. Point number 2, you have an infrastructure team, you have a security team, you have a network team.
Right.
There's friction.
Absolutely.
Right? And who does what? मेरा काम हो गया, आपका काम है, आपका काम है. There's friction. Now, when you're hyper converging stuff, the command and control changes. You basically agree to do one-click stuff with the agreement of the team that this is the right way to execute. Right? So that's one of the challenges where we see at the customer sides, because in the new scheme of things, command and control changes.
Remarkable. So Biswa, you partly mentioned about the cloud strategy, hyperconvergence, hybrid. While adopting a cloud strategy, what are the major pain points that you face? Because still there are issues. I mean, everyone says that the public cloud is safe, but still there are some challenges. How do you actually deal with these complexities?
So I think as a technology executive, it is not just about security. I think whenever I look at a third-party provider providing a service to us, it's a combination of security, combination of availability, a combination of contractual terms of support, how licenses are managed in that environment, what are the DevOps capabilities that I get out of that, how much of a skill set exists in the market. So choosing a supplier on the cloud has many combinations of questions, not just security, because you may have a very secure setup but not be able to use it at all. Conversely, very easy to use, very fluid, but not having security at all, right? Both in place, highly fragile, not at all highly available, right? Available, but there is no SLA guarantee behind it. So these kind of questions have to kind of fall together into a prism, right? It is not just one way of looking at it, but multiple ways to look at it. From a security perspective, obviously what most companies do, and we've done that as well, is that we start with a baseline because we have a policy. And we do apply a zero trust thought process, which means that you go with a lockdown kind of an environment as much as possible, and then on need basis kind of open up as need goes, in terms of what kind of accesses and what kind of privileges are existing. To that extent, I think a lot of cloud providers have given us tools, methodologies through which the security constructs. For example, how do you manage keys? How do you manage data in a cloud environment? How do you secure the data in transit, at rest? How do you ensure that there is a load balancing capability, a DDoS prevention capability, an IPS capability? So all of those capabilities which we are expecting to have in our on-premise data center ultimately also have to be there on the cloud, right? It's an extended data center. To us, it is not about as you were saying, cloud is a concept. It is ultimately a data center, right? It's a software defined, I would say a more modern data center, but it is a data center at the end of the day. So our job is to make sure that all the risks are appropriately nailed down, and that's what we do. But when we looked at risk from a much broader perspective, not just information security risk, but all other risks. Availability, like I said, data confidentiality, integrity, data protection is pretty important now. And with the new Data Privacy Act, for instance, we will look at how was data protected, how was data accessed. So all of these aspects taken holistically is how we would assess a risk in a cloud environment. And it is not possible for anybody to definitively say today as authority that, look, this is secure or that is not secure. It depends very much on your due diligence. It depends very much on your use case, what capabilities and what kind of workloads you're putting out there. But I would expect that most banks would follow the same process, that they would apply a more holistic due diligence. And then based on the controls that they would want, they would assess, and then they would go into the cloud, right? The same actually applies to the private cloud on-premise. You would actually apply the same set of rules, same set of principles, and whichever technology has to come in has to essentially adhere to those. Right? If it is again a disjointed setup of somewhere some other firewall, somewhere some other network switch, somewhere some other storage, it will probably not work together. So it has to work together, no doubt. But from a controls perspective, from a risk management perspective, we will treat both the cloud environments exactly identical, right? Because no one is more risky or less risky. We are going to look at both in an equitable manner. So I would say that is the approach we have taken, and we continue to evolve because cyber security is an extremely evolving topic. There is nothing where there is an end to it. So frankly speaking, there are new security constructs, new products, more processes that are being evolved in the cloud space, and we are adopting them as we go along, right? There is no perfect answer to it. So I think to answer your question, yes, we are adopting the cloud in a measured way, in a risk assessed manner, but I would do the same thing for my private cloud as I would do for the public cloud.
Okay, great. So now that comes with my last question. So obviously technology is rapidly growing, and it's very difficult to predict that what technology will work, or it's very difficult to take the call for 5 to 10 years of technology. What are the future technologies that you are betting on?
So our strategy is really around customer. That's one of the pillars I was talking about, right? So we are the world's first bank to be live on Alexa. So the future, for example, lies in using voice, using NLP. And that is one of the areas, for example, as a technology choice, which we will have to adopt, and how we adopt it, how we can embed that into our processes is really going to be the key.
Right.
Technologies can be copied, can be me too'd, right? But it is not about a me too strategy. It's about having the right product, right service, which completely shifts the mindset of the consumer, right? And how do we embed that in every interaction? How do you embed that in every channel? How do you embed that in every aspect of the customer's engagement with the bank? Mm-hmm. So that is one of the pillars that we have taken. That will drive some of the technology choices, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say, to your question earlier, ultimately it's about a bank strategy, it's about a company strategy that will dictate what technologies to adopt for the longer term. Mm-hmm. At the same time, there are certain other technologies which might have a shorter life cycle, shorter shelf life, and that also will happen, provided that there is a quick and easy mechanism to exit from that technology. So you fail, but you fail safe, you fail fast, right? So fail fast was always the case, right? But fail safe is important. You cannot, have a commitment of a lot of money down the drain and then realize that, I want to fail fast, right? So I think it's about making the decisive decisions in terms of long-term strategy, but at the same time, there'll be some short-term experiments, innovations, which may not last the full distance, right? But you need to be able to quickly exit from them. You need to be able to learn from them, right? And that will dictate what are your technology choices as well, right? So it's a combination of, I think, both of these, which will determine what the company's strategy is from a choice of technology perspective.
What about you? What are the future technologies that you are targeting or you're focusing on?
And for Nutanix, design is everything. All our efforts are really into making life simpler. Whether it's a Prism interface, which basically from a single interface provides all the insights into the data center, or your cloud orchestration, or your security. For us, that single console experience, that one-click experience for our customers,
right,
is what we will diligently work towards, right? And that's how we see Nutanix evolve. So we are basically evolving from a provider of hyper-converged technology to being a platform for digital and business transformation. And you'll see our evolution over the last 6 or 7 years.
Right.
We've kind of added multiple softwares. Everything that we've done is actually in software. Okay. And because of which our customers find fluidity in their operations when using this technology. And we'll continue to do that for our customers.
Quite interesting. Lastly, you spoke about future technologies, but wish list, if you could give like 4-5 points that you would like to do at IndusInd Bank, or you see you doing at IndusInd Bank.
So like I said, I think AI is one of the big areas that you're betting on. Definitely a lot of work is going on, a lot of research has to go in and understanding of how the data can be harvested and harnessed to make intelligent decisions, right, using AI. So that's an area. We are looking at software-defined data center, as I said, which is very important to gain efficiency, to be able to become more agile and do things without human effort, to become economical on human effort. So these are some of the things. Cloud I also spoke about. I think it's a very often quoted word. Data is the new oil. So I like to add on to that and say I think cloud is a big equalizer. Okay. Right? So it equalizes completely, and mobility, if you ask me, is a democratizer, right? It democratizes information completely. So now, for us, mobility has taken on entirely new meaning, because what is not possible, the question is what is not possible anymore. Everything is possible on the mobile. What can you not do, right, on the mobile? So it is becoming a ubiquitous methodology, a means to achieve every end that you would want. There is where I think the technology of the future still lies as a combination of these, I would say. Whether you use better data science using AI, whether you use more natural language processing in order for you to understand the customer behavior and predict and respond, or whether you're using the software-defined data center to become more efficient and internally more granular and more fine-grained in your approach, more flexible and agile. And then finally, mobility, right? Which will kind of bring the power to the consumer, and all of it kind of rests on obviously your cloud whether it's public or it's private or hybrid, right? So it has to kind of work on that premise. So I guess these are technologies which are now no longer new radical technology. These technologies will actually remain over years. It's just that whoever can get hit the sweet spot, so to speak, that's really the key, the secret sauce, as it were, right? So yeah.
Great, wonderful. It was nice chatting with you, Biswa and Gaurish. Thank you so much for sharing those insights. It was wonderful listening to you. Thank you so much, Gaurish.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Biswa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching Fin Business. That was Infrastructure Next series.